issue with it? Can I have a motion to approve the minutes? Jeannie, a motion, can I have a second?
I'll second.
And Bill seconds. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay. All right, on to special reports. Scott sent his report yesterday. Did anyone have any questions on his report?
Mary,
Yes.
don't you?
Oh, I don't want Scott to feel bad if I have no questions. We exchanged an email and I think you responded to it. I was kind of,
Yeah, I'll write a little blurb about each grant and I'll get you guys a full copy of the grant with all the attachments.
yeah, all I was asking for is, can you add pages?
Yeah.
So don't give us like a separate document on those grants, just like, you know, on the document you send us where there's multiple pages for each grant.
Yeah.
Just at the end of it, say CFA grant, write the top the way the others are, and then start tracking the.
Do you want to track them though, even though it's just a one-time thing until they're awarded? Or do you just want a separate like cover letter saying what I did?
I would say we should, I mean, my point of view would be, let's follow the process. But what do others think?
Because I mean, now that they're submitted, we won't hear anything till December or January. So for the next 4 months, it'll be blank. I
Right,
just
well,
know
what I
the
was
other-
gonna say, what you could do is you could say, you know, July through December. Anticipate, and just put it in one, so it'll be the same, but then we've got it, so we have, my thing is, I wanna make sure that when we look at those monthly reports, we have a good view of everything that's sort of in the fire.
Yeah, I can do that. That's not a problem.
Everybody good with that? Okay, any other questions for Scott? Okay. I am going to do a little bit of a switch here because Pam can only be with us for about 45 minutes. And I want to make sure she's there for the budget discussion. And then we'll go back to tactical. Are you guys okay with that switch? I just want to make sure because she's got to make sure she can talk about it with her board. And I want to make sure she's there and understands it. So Carol, we're going to turn that over to you.
Pass it along, please. We're jumping the budget.
Well, what I'm gonna do is have you just do the quick bills to be paid, then I'm gonna drop down to Dave to talk about, to you and Dave to talk about the budget, which is a little further down. So we're just gonna go a little bit out of order, so we'll just kind of put all that finance stuff together.
I have quite a bit in finance, to be honest, so.
Yep, that's good, let's do that, because I think that's the most important part of her, you know, if she's gotta leave us, I think that's the most important. I'm sorry.
So the bills to be paid for July, and which have been paid, was WCP Consultants down payment $56.25, July rent $150. July WCP Consultants $1306.25, and payroll admin assistant $182.83. That's July, and I've got copies of this case. August bills requested to be paid are WCP Consulting $1406.25, rent $150. TI printing meeting notice $23.16, and Town of Cape Vincent admin assistant payroll $121.35. So that's the bill request. Check request.
Yeah, can we have a motion to pay the bills?
Motion to pay the bills.
A second, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, Carol, pay the bills.
Okay, I just passed around the budget that we came up with. Kind of related to that is we did receive the town funds in June of 60,000, the village funds in July of 40,000. So looking at what we spent last year, looking at what we're looking, this is the budget we came up with, basically. I kind of felt that the discussion on tactical plan ties into the strategic initiatives.
It does, and we'll go right into that after you've gone through the numbers. So I think, Carol, the big change was that when we met as finance, from what you initially did was to not renew the New York Economic Development Council for next year. So that's $850. The only education we did from that was bills. And we didn't save enough money on the member versus non-member. Now we're all getting that, you know, monthly communications that they send out. At least those of us that were on the finance committee were sort of like, I'm not getting a whole lot of value from that document. Reading through it, it's more them, you know, pushing their next conference or whatever. Is anyone opposed because they found they were getting the value from maybe that newsletter? Because we don't save enough on sending someone, you know, with a member discount. It wasn't $850 worth of discount.
I see.
So the question is, we can still send people to their stuff. We would just have to now monitor their website as opposed to us, you know, getting a thing in the mail. And I know the one that Jim went to was not the Economic Development Council people. So, I mean, that was just sort of the thought process that we had in the finance subcommittee, but wanted to hear if anybody felt strongly about us, you know, at least maybe in another year, we think it is of value, but maybe we're just too early into it or whatever.
Well, that $850, that membership goes for how long?
Just
To
a
the
year.
end of the year.
Yeah,
So we can keep evaluating it too. but-
yeah, we could always add it
But
back.
I
in.
agree with you, if it's not that much of a discount to go to a conference, why spend the money? Why be a member?
I think if the communications we were getting were really like things we were acting on, but they
Yeah.
just haven't been,
So far?
yeah.
Yeah, and we can always change our mind again. This is a
Mhm.
budget.
Okay, anything else, Carol, you want to kind of take them through, or any questions?
Everything's fairly normal. We did get the agreement in place to split the rent, so the rent's in half now with the Cape and Stark Council, so that's not a bad thing. And then we decided we didn't want to delineate, you know, the strategic initiatives that we would like to act on. We didn't want to break them, you know, actually put the dollars on them because we don't really have it, so.
Right.
And that came from what, you know, Dave reported as your group's kind of priorities.
Right.
And then tied into this, the budget needs to go, we need to have a joint town village meeting, which we're hoping
Yeah,
our next meeting. And then they would need to approve the budget as well, and then it has to go in Paris by the end of September.
so that September 12th, our September 12th meeting, with the board's approval, tomorrow I'll send a note to Paul and Jerry. I'll copy Dan and Pam and Michelle and Mary and say, you know, because that's sort of our process. You know, we'd like to invite you guys to the meeting. It has to go through the mayor and supervisor. Is everybody okay with that for the September 12th meeting?
5:30 to 6:30 meeting, is that
I
right?
think what we did last time is we spent about 30 minutes. We did 5:30 to 6, just to make sure we had our act together. And then at 6 o'clock, we had them arrive, just in case there was any last minute things we wanted to change. And I think it should be fairly straightforward. The idea would be that we would first present the strategic plan with a focus on the tactical items. And then Carol would take them through the budget so they could say, oh yeah, here's where they plan the money for those things.
Okay.
That was at least what the finance group thought we would do. Sound like a good plan?
Yeah.
Is there anything else we would need to talk about with them during a joint meeting? Because this is sort of, there's 2 a year we're supposed to have. This one is supposed to be on the budget, and the one in April is supposed to be, so how are we coming on the budget, right? So trying to align with when the town does their budgeting and when the village, so they're both giving us money at different times of the year. And so we try to align it when they're giving us money, right? So it was September and April are those two timeframes for that.
I kind of look at Pam and Dan, is there anything else your boards would want Do you have information about?
Maybe a brief summary on what we've been doing.
That's a good idea.
Not a big, long, lengthy deal, but just a brief summary, I think would be helpful for the rest of them. I don't know.
Other than that, the strategic plan is really what I think they'll want to hear about.
Yeah. Okay, so we can add that. That's a good suggestion. Yeah, thanks. All right, so what I'll try to do is I will try to do the summary of what we've accomplished since, probably since in the last fiscal year. Remind them from September, through.
We attended meetings and that sort of thing.
Right, and then Dave would take them through this, strategic plan, and then Carol would take them through the money. And hopefully we could do that in an hour, unless there's a lot of pushback or questions. So anything you guys can do to sort of grease the skids, if you will, so they're not like surprised, that would be good. Jim, you had a question?
Yeah, just a quick one. Is the Fringe Festival subsidy in the proposed budget, or is that not in our budget?
So that the French festival that we did, the $6,000 was a grant from Northern New York Community
Oh, that's right.
Foundation.
Yep.
And by the way, I did do the final report on that, so that's been submitted. And that's a once and done. We're not gonna get that again. That was, because the way we got it was, we had this surprise, we needed more security from New York State, and so it's a surprise and unplanned. And the chamber realizes that it was a once and done, so.
There isn't any other grants we can go after for them?
There might be, but definitely not Northern New York.
Okay.
And I think we'd have to think about it in a different way. This was sort of an emergency thing, which worked, which is great. It worked. And honestly, the grant ended up to be $6,000. Security was $6,900, and that didn't include EMS. So it was very easy for us to say, we spent the whole thing, and plus. So it was a good, I worked with the chamber on the wording and all that. Okay, any other questions?
So do we need a motion to accept this budget temporarily?
Yeah, I think we should. Yeah. So can we have a motion to have this be the proposed budget that we share with the town and the village?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Dave, and a second.
Second.
Jim will second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? All right, here we go.
That's posted in our shared folders in case you're pulling into a spreadsheet
Yeah.
or something.
This way you have a hard copy and a shared one. Okay, now we were a little out of order there. So let's now jump back to the tactical plan.
Okay, so I know I need to put this together in more of a polished briefing set for the town and village boards, and I will do that, but just a little short on time getting today. So what we did is we came up with a process. The whole strategic draft is on in the review files. I take a look at it, and then there's a very concise list of priorities by high, medium, and low in there as well that's broken out. What I want to highlight tonight is the initial high priority items. There's 9 of them on the list. However, 4 of them are budget line items that we want to try to hit on as we go into this next year. High priority items we defined as things that we can get to in the next 9 months. So really, before the next budget year's over, before if we have a turnover of board members, we wanted to be able to attack some items on there. The first one, and most importantly, being a collaborative central website. So right now we have a bunch of different ways of distributing information in the town. Not all of them are free to the town. So like the Chamber of Commerce, those are things that people have to pay in order to get into. What we want to do is create a way to seek out information that we want to provide to the community, and then provide it to the community in a way that people will actually consume. That will be both sort of like an events calendar, but beyond that, it'll be an opportunity to put on opportunities for the town, like identifying things we talked about, identifying business opportunities, locations that we can connect people to. We have a vacant building. Is there anybody out there looking? this is the owner, let's try to get these people together. Also, secondary to that is a job board, not necessarily to be like help wanted, but things that we need the community to do. As we identify more and more opportunities to support the community over the long term, do we have volunteers? Do we have people with some expertise to be able to set up or stand up and to get into that portion of it? And then, if we do have additional opportunities later for paid positions, whatnot, we could obviously put it in there as well. But again, consolidated location for information that will support everything else in the strategic plan moving forward. Got an estimate coming in from North Country Design, and right now it looks probably between $5,000 to $10,000 to set something up. But once again, we didn't want to put any code or level to it until we actually have more than one estimate, and then we'll go back to it. That would then be,
They built the website
they
for us,
build,
right?
yeah, from
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, and we probably should do a request for proposal. We have a form that we put in, and there's 2 or 3 local companies that we can
absolutely.
put that.
Do we have to publish that publicly? Like, put in the TI?
I would just check what the procurement policy is, just like if it's between 5 and 15,000, you only need 3 proposals, then you could just ask. You should have an RFP, so everybody's bidding apples to apples.
Right,
But you should maybe just go out and get those 3 quotes from the local firms, where if it's over whatever, I don't know what the procurement
Yeah.
number is, that you have to RFP it, then you gotta post it publicly.
right, and I think we did do,
I don't remember
when we
what
did the
number it was.
executive director, I think we did do a, we put it on the New York State,
Yeah,
Contract
we did.
report.
yeah.
We did.
I mean, if it's under the threshold for procurement, then you only need 3 quotes,
Bill,
then
can
I
you
would just
Let us know that. Thank
reach
you.
out locally and get the 3 quotes.
The second thing on here is we were originally started out as a housing study to provide hard data for specific Cape Vincent activities and initiatives moving forward. Right now, we have a bunch of either anecdotal information or we have segments of larger studies that don't necessarily apply to the Cape, either the village or the town. So there's county, there's state, but nothing specific moving forward. One of the things we talked about at the Finance Committee meeting this week is perhaps kind of expanding that out to include an economic aspect of it as well. So not just housing, but economic and housing, in order to, once again, provide the hard data that's going to be needed for grants and additional initiatives moving forward.
Dave, help me understand economic development, because that wasn't somewhere in a work group we talked about.
Yeah, so we had focused on the housing study, but at the Finance Committee meeting, it was suggested that we look at adding in some economic data points as part of it. So they would look at, these are the requirements for low, medium, high income housing. These are the breakdown between Airbnbs versus short-term rentals and long-term housing, rentals versus purchasing, but then also basically what financial opportunities are out there, to drive that growth.
So I forwarded you guys, so Scott had sent us a link to the Onondaga housing study, and so I cold called CZB, which was the group that did that, and I forwarded you guys. The guy was super nice, and he was like, I'll do a quick thing for free for you to see whether a housing study is even a good idea. And so I forwarded all of you his email back. He's the one that used the term economic development strategy. The thing is that he also offered to get on the phone with us and kind of take us through some stuff. So I wanted to bring it up at this meeting to say, personally, I'm thinking this guy's free. He's a big buck consultant. He's willing to give us some free data. Why not talk to him? And I wanted to see who else might want to be on the call I mean, I think for the thing we're doing on the 12th to say, we're gonna do a study in this space, whether it's economic development strategy or a housing study. But, you know, to get some more information about what we want to do. But I wanted and I said, I don't have a board meeting until, you know, tonight. I'll get back to you. So first of all, do people think that's a good idea to have a phone call with this guy?
I don't think it hurts. It gives us a data point.
Yeah, and I
And an
mean,
opinion. He's one consultant of many.
he
but-
is, and, you know, his suggestion was that we don't do our own housing study, that we try to get Jefferson County to do it, and then deep dive into each of the river communities
Yeah.
as a way to do it. I don't know if we want to do that or
Well,
not, and
the
again,
Clayton
like you
one
say,
that
Jean,
you
he's
sent,
one.
Pam, was really comprehensive. I spent some time in that, and that was really good.
Good,
I
I'm glad
liked
You spent some time, I was wondering if anybody.
No,
had
I
time.
did.
What, on the Clayton one?
Yeah,
I
Clayton
thought it
was
was
very,
really good.
Clayton was very unhappy
and she
with
pointed
that.
that out. I think she thought we might.
Well, no, I think the data points regarding Kate, there's some good data points that we can glean from that. That are those the data points, if we do a study, do we want those data points? And those were all the different things, but I thought there was some good information referencing Kate.
Mhm,
So, I mean, again, I think this consultant can help us,
yeah.
but there may be data points that he'll want us to consider.
So this guy's in Maine, so this is gonna be a Zoom call.
Okay.
If I could just see a show of hands of who would like to be on that, and then I will try to work calendars with him and.
When did
whoever.
you say it would be?
I'll try to work calendars, so if, you know, somebody wants to be on, raise your hand. I will work to, yeah, okay, so I got Jim, who else?
I'll try.
Yeah, I know, and again, so it's Dave, Bill, anybody else?
I'd like
I'll
to be on
try.
just so I know we're getting the data you need for grants.
Okay, Pam, Scott.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so I've got Jim. My boss sounds like a read. Jim, Dave, Bill, Pam, and Scott. Was that the only folks that wanted to be on?
I probably can't during the week.
Okay,
Send the invite, I mean, if it works for me, I can jump on it.
yeah, I think, I mean, again, let's see what he has to say, you know, I mean,
Yeah, I
he
think
did, Onondaga, I know they did stuff over in Western New York, because in his email, he said, I never got any, I didn't even get as far as Sackett's Harbor, so I've never, you know, been in the Cape kind of thing. All right, I'll include you, Dan. Jeannie, you want me to just include you in case it
You
works?
can, I'm just so slammed at work.
Yeah, no, I get
can't
it.
take time during the
Well, once
day.
you said it, you could share it, you know, you can work it among the people who are super interested and share it with all.
Right, I will, and then see if people can do it. All right, sorry, Dave, but that was perfect segue to that.
So the third one is the establishment of the micro grant fund. So with the requirement or the desire to be able to establish and operate the New York Forward grants requests coming in, the ability to set aside some money up front to do a proof of concept for that by doing micro grants for the community. And that is putting the process together so that we can offer people in the town and the village the ability to apply for small grants to complete community projects. With the intention of that threefold. Number one, to be able to then have the fund established so that we can accept gifts and private donations to the process. Number two, to verify that the process for accepting and deciding whether grants are useful or appropriate to be recommended to the town and the village as New York Forward moves forward. And then the third one is to actually get our name and, you know, start advertising the things that we're doing for the community and boost the community forward. Don't have exactly any examples for it. You know, one of the things that I was thinking about was possibly like signs for the walking tour or something like that. Park benches, you know, like the Boy Scouts want to put a park bench in, something like that, where people can start getting a little bit more participation in the community. And we can advertise that. The fourth thing on there was creating, and this isn't a high priority, but I'll say low hanging fruit for the first year, is creating a display for the town to take to events. So that's like a table runner and a banner for Cape Vincent specifically. Where that could be used, we were talking about it just yesterday. Fort Drum has an opportunity to do career fairs where they do all the partnerships with the community.
I know it's partnerships in
Sorry.
the community.
So they have an opportunity for retiring service members or service members getting out to actually join
Employment
in.
transition.
Oh, CSP.
CSP, thank you. That's it. The Civilian Skills Program. So that program would allow us to bring on an intern for 60 to 90 days free of charge. Town, village, the LDC, whichever we wanted to do. But there's a lot of expertise down there of service members who are retiring. So we talked about trying to leverage Fort Drum. Only thing that would take is, somebody to monitor hours, make sure that they're actually doing the work that we want them to do. And they can do anything from strategic planning, grant writing, if we really wanted to have them do it,
Website, maybe.
website development, maintenance. They could also do research and development within the community. If we want them to have, look at how many long-term or short-term rentals we have. They'd be able to actually go, do all those type of things that we don't have necessarily time to do. And if we want to do that, they do have those career fair type things every 60 days on post. To be able to go down there, just sit there and get that opportunity up. We see that as an opportunity to both leverage Fort Drum and get some free labor moving forward.
Through RACOG or River Area Council of Governments, we've probably used 15 or 20 over the past 5 years. It's been very successful. We've
Yeah.
used them in all different positions through different local governments around.
Give us an example, Scott.
We've, I know DeFerrier had one that worked with their DPW, like he was maintenance equipment heavy operator guy, so he worked with their DPW for 90 days on the municipal government. We had a couple others that have worked within our offices, like administrative wise, or we've had them do studies. We've had them do a traffic study. We've had them do a couple other studies throughout our community. They do a report. There's a few limitations like liability wise that we ran into when we wanted to do some things, but we've worked around it. But we've had quite a lot of communities we've been in the great area.
They maintain their healthcare and salary from the military until they're out. So it's a free labor, but we provide them the experience and the resume building for the end of that. So those are the four budget line items up front that we were talking about. And then those go into some other high priority items for the first year. One is a time map of events to try to look at additional opportunities for the year. So we've got a bunch of events that the Chamber of Commerce used to, be responsible for planning and everything else. But what other opportunities are out there? How can we work the community's heritage and culture into those gaps and be able to keep Cape Vincent's name out there during those other times? Supporting the existing childcare providers, so either assisting the one that's out there trying to get through our grant process right now, or providing some sort of advertising or trying to pull in others if that one does fall through. Third one is to support initiatives on bike routes. And then what's the last one? Oh, the DEC aquarium. None of those require money. Those are all just, things that we can get after during the first year, and incorporate them into the website, incorporate them into the events that we're doing to try to bring additional visibility on the town. Everything else after that starts falling into the medium, so 18, 20 months down the road, and they're in the strategic plan that's in the folders. But what we wanted to concentrate on today was those things that we think we could get after this next 8 to 9 months to show we've got some momentum moving forward.
Any questions?
Great.
Good job. Great, thank you. Thanks for that whole committee. You guys did a super job and a very good. Okay, I am going to continue to jump around because Pam, I know you need to leave. So we're going to go down to Pam and her village activities. And if you could also talk about the EV charging grant, since that's on the budget. And I have not seen a communications form yet, ma'am.
I'm looking at it on my computer and I apologize. So we did submit for,
What are you doing?
the dog ate my homework.
Well, yeah, so I am just like the communication form police,
I
right,
know.
Dan?
Oh, absolutely.
So, East End Park Phase 2, submitted on this past, Wednesday, July 31st, pretty much down to the wire, but we did get it in. And the main reason for, this was the last and third time that we could apply for this grant. It was applied for it 2 times before. If we didn't apply for it this year, we'd lose our ability to use the local share match through the purchase price of the property. So that was the main reason for going, really trying to get it in. It does meet at least 2 of the strategic plan goals. It enhances recreational and tourist attractions, leverages natural resources to expand outdoor recreational opportunities. And it probably meets more of those, but I could fit 2 on this form. We would be, the village submitted it. I worked on it with Jerry and I submitted it personally. I have, I don't know what my feelings are about our chance of getting it. It was a lot of work in a short amount of time, so we'll see. It's typically awarded in December or January is when we would hear if we do get it. There was talk of our village clerk doing the administrative work on that grant. And I don't know the exact amount of administration fees. The quote that was provided in the overall cost didn't have a breakout for that, so I'll let you know about that. And I will get this signed and uploaded on the site. So the only big change, does everybody know what that project is essentially? So it's the Eberly property, the old cheese plant, and then the 2 pieces. The only big change was last year's drawing that Bernie Carr did, and it essentially showed the whole thing as a parking lot, which I didn't feel was a very good use of Riverview property personally, but what we changed was there's a product called EnviroGrid, which essentially would keep it looking like a green space. It's been used at Southwick Beach for their parking, and it would allow for more park space, still could be parked on. There's options for doing some different type of striping that's not permanent, but would suit purpose. So when that, if we get it, I think there's still discussion at the village board on the overall scope of the project, but if we could get the existing buildings taken down for sure, maybe we wouldn't use the full grant if we get it. That's kind of it in a nutshell. Does anybody have any questions? The other interesting thing when I was doing it though is looking at the tax map and realizing that the town property is right behind that. So I think that's something that the town and the village should talk about as a overall. I don't know what the intention is there for the town long
I
term.
think we've talked about overflow.
Right, so, I think that's something that we could talk about. The other thing for you, we didn't really set up a joint full board meeting, did we? Or we were gonna try to do that in August before this board meets. And I think I dropped the ball on the communication.
I don't have a date for that.
Okay, and I don't either. Is there, if we were looking at, since we only have, we do have 3 weeks left. When is your next town board meeting? The 22nd or the 15th? 15th is a Thursday. 15th. I Okay. I think there was an issue with one of our board members, and that's why I sort of dropped it. Would there be a chance maybe the following, the 22nd? I know that's the date that Paul,
Thursdays, yeah. I would
okay,
check with
so we
Paul.
could try for that, the 22nd.
This is for your whole board and our whole board?
Right. We talked about doing sort of just a joint meeting between the two boards prior to the three-party board. And, let's see. Is
And
there
then
anything else?
the other one is the EV charging station. And I think there is a communications form on
There
EV
is,
charging.
right, that
station.
Christine, I think, had filled out. and
Right,
submitted.
right, and I think I put that up on our,
You did.
so, and then I'd have to look, Dan, did we get the ones that Paul signed for the other two town grants? We did,
I put
okay,
them on.
you put them in there, thank you, sorry.
Nope, fine.
Okay, so did you want to talk a little bit about the EV charging station?
I don't personally know that much about.
All right,
that.
I'll talk about it.
Okay, and there, so we do have EV chargers included in the plan for. the
Right.
Eastern Park.
So what this particular piece is National Grid has grants available for infrastructure. So it wouldn't be for the charging stations themselves, that would come from New York Forward, but this would make sure that the lines under the ground were correct. We wouldn't need Scott on this because we have to use their approved list of, 400 different people. I'm willing to take a lead on that and work with Pam because I would need somebody from the village that knows where the New York Forward charging stations need to go, right? So it would be a joint thing. But I don't want to take that if somebody else has a burning desire to work with Pam on that. Speak now if you have a burning desire. Burning desires, any burning desires? No, okay, so that's the EV parking. Pam, you and I will work together on that. I'll get started on trying to go through the 400 names and figure out who's closest. And we'll see what we can find out, and then we can give you guys more information on that. Okay, that's EV parking. Anything else from a village perspective, Pam, before we let you leave?
Not that I can think of at this moment.
Okay.
And if anything comes up, you can certainly text me. I'm sorry to miss Jim's report. I might call you for a firsthand.
If you buy him breakfast, he'll be happy to talk.
I'm sorry to leave. but-
How about the LWRP?
Nothing back from our planning. I think Jerry has reached out to Jeff, so I will follow up on that.
Keep kicking at it.
Yeah, I will definitely,
Thank you.
definitely will. Thank you. I'm sorry, guys.
No, big deal.
Okay, thanks for coming. All right, so now we're gonna, I'm just jumping all over the place, so sorry about that.
To be clear, I didn't finish treasurer stuff.
I was just, did you notice me pointing at you, man?
Yeah, let's get back into order.
Let's try to do this.
I did email out, but I know everybody doesn't notice everything that we send out, but the reclassification was filed on June 24th. So the forms that Bowers had to do to reclassify us have been filed, but they did make very clear that we can accept, we can go on the Northern NNY Community Foundation, their rules tell them who they can give a grant to, and private foundations wasn't on that list. So that's how that little wrinkle happened, but we're not excluded from doing our mission.
That's great.
In most cases, and I provided you the letter from Bowers, and I sent that out on, I think, like June 14th. And then we did file, she thought they could just get them to switch it. So anyways, I think the switch is new to them. So anyways, the form went in on June 24th to really get us switched. But again, nobody knows the timeline. Okay. The CD renewed on July 12th. We've got $986 interest on it so far. Our financials show as of the end of July, our cash balance on hand is 184,000. So we need to, I would like to buy another CD. And I'd like to get one for 50 and maybe then we talk next month. And so they're staggered. And then as we start, if we're, this is, we're getting to where we can develop the funds we want to do some initiatives.
Yeah,
But, $1,000 interest in 6 months is great.
yeah,
So if anybody agrees, I'd like to just do 50 more this month and then we'll talk again next month. So I'd like to make that motion.
yeah, so we need a motion to get it 50.
Motion.
Okay, Jeannie, motion, may I have a second?
Second.
Jim will second, all in favor? Anyone opposed? There you go buy it.
Okay. Did we come to a decision on the rent policy or should we just talk about that after, how we're going to coordinate that? Can we talk about that after the
So
meeting?
where we are on, so we're gonna continue to write the check for the 150 for the rent. And then the Arts Council is just gonna give us 75. She was checking it, Liz was checking to see if Mary can just deposit it. I don't have that answer yet.
Okay, I have some deposit slips with me. I'll just hand it off to you.
That's
in case
fine.
That wanders along the path.
Yeah, I mean,
That'd be ideal. It would just stop the slowdown of
yeah,
the fact that I can get to Cape Vincent some Fridays.
right. Well, yeah, and I mean, and the thing is that, for her to give it to me and then I'll go to, we can do
Yeah.
that, but if Mary Rupp, just when she's going to the bank doing other stuff, can just deposit it, that would be awesome.
That'd be the ultimate. Okay, so that's the hope. But it's in place and they're gonna give us a check on the rent's due on the 18th. They're gonna give us a check before that for $75
Yeah,
each
and,
month.
and they may, Casey, try to bring in like an extra file cabinet, because they want to store stuff, which is, I didn't know if we had both of those filled or not.
No, I think I'm only using one of them.
Yeah, so, we may, when you're around, we may go in there and do that. The other thing that was a question is how would we coordinate if we're using the office and they're using the office, and how do we know? So right now, Liz and I are gonna be the 2 points of contact. So if one of you wants to use the office, for a governance committee or whatever, let me know. I'll let her know that we're in there. She'll do the same. She knows Casey's the first Saturday of the month.
We
So
figure out the keys.
they got the keys from the,
No, we couldn't get in the office. That
Yeah.
when we had our governance meeting,
Why not?
but we couldn't get in the lock
It
to work.
wouldn't, the key would not.
Oh,
I
my
had
key
the
worked.
same
Your key worked.
problem. My key worked because Casey got me a new key. The key I tried to use when I tried to get in there the other day, I couldn't get in.
Wonder when you tried yours last, Dan? Because they copied
And I
your
dropped
key.
off those surveys.
Oh,
Yeah, and it worked.
Okay.
Right, yeah, that was recently. Yeah, if you want to try to make a copy of the copy that I have, because it works, because I used it yesterday.
I can't remember who we borrowed it from, but we tried it, didn't work. We still had a great meeting.
It was probably.
I think,
must have
I think Mandy had your.
Oh, no, wait a second, Mandy had my key. My key
No, we
was
sit
defective.
outside.
Yeah.
That was
Beautiful
it.
day.
It was my key is the bad key, but if
Was
you
it the
need a
door
key, I
knob
now
or the
have a good
deadlock?
key.
We
Okay.
tried both.
It works on both.
Yeah,
nothing
I couldn't get it
Yeah.
to work
I
either.
will say we were there Monday night. The house looks great. It looks very nice.
It does, it looks very nice. Looks good.
So that's all I have.
Okay, all right. Moving down. Dave, you want to talk about internal control policy, and you gave us lots
Yeah, I
of
passed you out
paper.
a copy. What I'd ask you to do is just kind of take a look at it. There's not a lot in there that applies to the normal things that we do that's a long-term. But as a organization, we're required to have these on file so that in the future, as we bring on assets or we start to actually take in larger amounts of money over time, we need to comply by these. So it's, things on there like inventory processes. We don't have anything in inventory, but theoretically someday we will. So just an opportunity to look through that and have them on file so that when we're audited, we actually have copies.
So Dave, when would you like anybody to get any edits back to you?
Next month at the next meeting.
Okay, that's our joint meeting. So do you want to get an email
Emails.
before that? Okay. So if you guys could read it over, email Dave any changes before that in that 30 minutes that we have. So for the agenda on our 30 minutes on the 12th, let's make sure we pass both of these with any changes that come in. But everybody take a look at it, right? So we can do that efficiently. Thank you.
It's based off like an ABO template or something. like that.
Yeah, and then we brought it to the finance committee and we made some changes based on what we saw and then.
Yeah, so just, yeah, look and just email him any edits so we can get to final on that. All right, governance, Mr. McDonough.
So the big thing is we held our beautiful outside meeting. And it was based on the discussion that we had, oh, I don't know, back in April or May, where we largely kind of like we're doing now, is we kind of go over the policies and we kind of make changes and adjust and everything like that. And then we do our big push in January, when our either our bylaws or our subcommittee charter says we have to have 2 meetings a year. And it seems like overkill. So doing some research, both with the ABO and the lawyer who taught the ethics and governance class at the EDC meeting, there's nothing that requires us to have 2 governance subcommittee meetings. So my recommendation was really, why don't we just go ahead and change the language to make an annual one with a target towards the November review with an eye towards our January annual meeting. And then if we need to have one, then we just have 1 or more subcommittee meetings, but we're not forced to have 2. We just have a meeting for the sake of a meeting because our language says that. And so nothing more, nothing less. So we would, if you agree with that, then we would just change the language and we'll just vote on it at a future meeting.
Makes sense.
No reason to have 2 meetings, right?
And I think if we put in the wording, or other meetings as required, right? So it's
Yeah.
like you have to have the one.
Exactly.
And now that we sort of last year, remember, we had this sort of big, thing we passed that was like, and all of these policies grouped together because we're kind of past the point where we're noodling on each one.
So Bill, with that specifically talking about governance, does that same thing apply to our other committees, of which we have the audit and finance committee?
So
I think we have to rename that while we're doing this, right, into one committee?
Yeah, I think we just call it a finance.
Did I not see somewhere where we have to have an audit committee?
So if I remember in the research, and it's a little rusty here, but yes, you have to have an audit subcommittee and a finance subcommittee and a governance subcommittee. However, the way we do it with the combined finance and audit, there's nothing that precludes that, and we've kind of combined the 2. Now, I did not ask the question about whether or not the same thing as far as the 1 versus 2 applied to our other committees, because I asked specifically for governance. However, I will go back to that same guy, the gentleman there, but the way he phrased it, I think it's really our charter, our bylaws, and our subcommittee. So I suspect the answer for that will be exactly what it is for the government subcommittee. But I can look at that and get back to you. If the same rules apply, where we say we have to have 2 meetings, but yet we're really kind of doing that business in most of these meetings, and we really just have to have the 1, and then we can add as applicable, then by all means do that. But I owe you an answer to that if that's the way we want to go ahead and go with that.
And verbiage wise, if we're supposed to have a finance, a governance, and an audit, do we need a separate audit committee, or can it become a combined committee?
Okay.
But let's understand that
I
clearly.
think that the only reason we ended up with 2 when we first put all that together way back when.
Well, I don't think we ever have had an actual audit committee.
No, I meant that we had 2
Sorry.
finance meetings
Okay.
was because of the 2 joint board meetings. Right, so we were like, we wanted finance to meet before the meeting with the town village board to make sure what were we gonna present to them from a financial perspective, especially that April one, because that's sort of a, where are we on the money meeting? And then that second one is the one we just had to prepare what was just prepared and will be presented September 12th. I think that's why we said we wanted to.
Okay, and then jumping back to the joint meeting, are you going to want to use the end of July financials in your slides?
We probably should.
Yeah. Because August, wouldn't, well, I would have August done and could slip it to you right before,
Yeah,
which is fine too.
yeah, let's do, if we can. If it's not, if it's pressure, we'll put July in if we can't. But it's or September 12th.
I work
so-
till 10:30 the night before this meeting every time, so.
It's a thankless job. Okay, so everybody make sure you read these two policies that David spent a lot of time on and give him any feedback so we can pass those on September 12th at 5:30.
Karen, I have a quick question.
Yes,
It's okay to have audit and finance as one committee, subcommittee?
that's what we're asking. We have an auditor, we use an auditor, so what happens is the auditor gives the finance committee, well, actually gave the treasurer the results of the audit and then came to our meeting and briefed the whole board.
That's exactly what I'm getting at.
Okay.
Is it okay or is it not?
Well, I'm on board, C3. It's a pretty official type of board, right? I don't know, it's $12 million, whatever it is on the thing. So the CFO is the treasurer of Prudential Corporation, right? So our governance committee said you can't have them as both. And so I had audit and then finance became something separate. And these people are really strict. I mean, we're not at that size, but they follow the law like this. And so the object of the audit committee was very simple. I had to get it because it was simple, but you do an audit review with the outside auditor as your help, but you present to the board the 3 months after the year is finished, basically, in April, like in.
That would have been about the timing for us. right?
Yeah, and then you're required to give, if it's a description of what the year was before, with an explanation that an audit does. There's a prescription of what things you found some troublesome or things that needed to be fixed. And that was the singular role of the audit committee, separate from finance. So I just throw it in. I don't know if it applies or it doesn't, but it struck me as
Right.
separate.
I see, I've got it in my head that we need an audit committee. That's what I've got.
And we may well, I know, looking at the bylaws and or the committee charter, it is finance and audit.
Okay.
So from the get-go of this board, for whatever reason, it's got, I don't know why, but I can ask the question.
And of course, we do have the auditor come in and present the audit to us. We
Yeah.
did that in April, you know.
And I mean, that was the stuff that MRB wrote, so there
Right.
might be some little different rules for LDCs, but I think it's definitely worth the questions, so thank you, Carol. All right, Club Street, Scott and Dan.
Doing borings this week, today and tomorrow, although I drove by, didn't see anything going on. For the bulkhead to check, soil and rock and whatever. We had the environmental guy from Long Island here Monday morning. We have permission to get in and do the asbestos assessment. So that's been turned over to Atlantic Testing. Other than that,
So are the purchases final?
Trottier is, Captain Jacks has been sent back for an update on the abstract,
Okay,
which I don't understand. But the lawyers
Stuff is
told
tricky.
Tucker because it's been more than a year, they needed an updated abstract. I said, well, I hadn't taken 4 months to do what they were supposed to do. It wouldn't have been a year.
hey, if the Trottier property's done,
Oh, yeah, that's been
Yeah.
done for quite some time.
great.
So
Anything else?
They're also working on the seeker and the planning board application. They hope to have the application to the village planning board shortly. Or at least the site work.
afraid that there's no asbestos.
Yeah, just as to cost. Dan, we're gonna move right on to you with any other town updates.
Don't know if you noticed the walking path they started out here
No,
around the town property. Keith's had it in his budget for a couple of years. They had slow work this week. Keith got a hold of Billy, and so it all kind of happened on Friday morning. Might as well get at it. So, and Billy lost his mom. I don't know if you knew that.
No.
She passed Monday. I'm not sure if any rain is yet. Still waiting for the LWRP on the village. The town has approved it. They turned it over to the planning board, which I don't know. It's not really what should have been done, but they did. So that's we're all sitting around waiting on that, which will, I think, help us with our strategic plan for sure. Have to apologize to the board and especially Casey on the sewer study. Unbeknownst to us, when Martin and LaJudas turned over the surveys, the trailer parks had taken their one copy, made copies, given it to all of their residents. They filled it all out, and unbeknownst to us, they were all turned over to Casey. Well, they don't have a vote.
Well, Dan, at that board meeting, we asked, we said, what about all these people who will have to pay for this? And the board said, yeah, you can have them fill them out. And I've got a copy from Michelle Bouchard. I mean, this was talked about in that board meeting.
But they don't count.
Okay, but it was talked about in the board meeting to have us fill it
We-
out to
and
get the opinions.
And I. and
That's why it
I-
happened, the background.
I
That's what
agree
occurred.
that. those
So
people
I don't
should
think it
have
was
a say.
unbeknownst that we got them.
It was unbeknownst that they were turned over to Casey.
Oh.
We didn't know.
Oh, so what were we
So
gonna
I
do with
counted
these
them.
So the
that
reason-
otherwise that you had us do them?
We were gonna count the ones that were legit.
And do what with the other ones that you said you wanted your voice back from as the town board?
They aren't gonna come into play. That's not the way the law is written.
Then
If
I
you own a property,
think we were misled at the board meeting anyway.
And they lease land,
what's that?
they lease
They
land.
lease land, they don't have a vote.
So the owner of the mobile park gets one
Gets one.
survey.
No matter how many connections he has, it's just one vote.
So,
I got
so I
you.
guess the real question would be, because I happen to have been at one of those meetings
Yeah,
where
yeah.
that was talked about. I guess the question is, does it change the outcome? So,
Oh,
if-
dramatically.
no, so with the, what you call legitimate survey results,
Right.
is that say, yes, the sewer is going through?
No, it says that there's about 60-40 positive. There's no decision been made. Matter of fact, we've scheduled a meeting Wednesday, the 28th. It's a communication session. Everybody's invited to come, ask your questions. There is more funding. It is more attractive. We want to leave it up to the taxpayers in that district to make the decision. But anyway, my thought was you had the legitimate ones, and then when you sent it back, I'm like, what the heck is this? So I apologize.
That's okay.
Anyway,
I
When
still
this-
don't, I still fail to understand why we were told that, yeah, we like the opinions of the state.
Opinions are
of all
fine,
the
but
people
when
that
we
say.
present it as legitimate legal votes or surveys, they don't count. Because they don't own property.
So I would like to understand what the point was to have us park owners do this. If,
Well, if it would have come back wholeheartedly positive, we would have thought, well, a lot of these members may think it's a good idea.
but it came back wholeheartedly negative.
Right,
So
we're
that's
we're
been
still
thrown
taking that
aside.
into consideration.
Okay,
We're,
that's
we're not making decisions on anything.
Wednesday, the 28th,
Wednesday, the 28th, I don't know the time yet.
or
We'll
where,
just talk
here.
about it, I'm sure. we'll get there. That's it, I guess.
So, maybe it's you or Scott to talk about, there were 2 grants submitted for the town. So
So we
you
did,
want to just talk about those
Yeah, go ahead.
briefly?
Yep. so we did submit for the state smart growth comp plan update with the village support. They passed a resolution that they would participate in and support the application. It looks to update the 2012 update from the 98 plan that was adopted. $100,000 grant, $11,000 local, $99,000 grant, $11,000 local share for a total of $110,000 to hire a consultant. Same time frame as award as the village grants. If awarded, they would go through the process of RFP for a consultant to come in and do a comp plan update. The committee would be appointed. That committee would meet. Town union right now, they meet monthly with the consultant. Consultant also holds other public work sessions, public information information sessions, meetings with local focus groups, to update the comp plan. And then the second one was they submitted for an additional phase of Club Street, which would be the last phase, which would include purchasing Chartier's boathouse and tearing it down and putting in additional dockage. That's in the master plan.
So that's the like 1C.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
No, it's-
It's
Who knows
1B.
anymore?
We got into 1A, 1-2, and 1C. This is actually phase 2, which is the large boathouse that runs adjacent to the village dock.
Everything we presented,
So the white building, what I'll call the white building and that area.
In that boathouse attached.
that would include the town using the purchase prices of the local share, and then putting in, demoing that and putting in another dock with the same amenities, electric pump out,
Right.
Wi-Fi. all
So
this.
then for the transient docks, would that end up to be 3 docks or 4 docks?
It would end up to be 3, right?
It depends if we would,
Depends on how much,
if we
They come
lead
back
into
with-
another voter infrastructure grant, it would be a fourth.
4 docks, okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to
If
like, in my
we go
mind, think
after
of
the
those
big
big.
grant again, if we don't, then we could have it as a seasonal rental.
Mhm.
And phase 3, if you want to hear about it, would be to come off the end of the village dock with the L over towards the ferry dock. So it would be all enclosed and all more docking.
Right.
Down the road.
So I know I harp on these communications documents. But I think, I know Bill, went to all the boards. I think I would really like to hear, and it's too bad Pam is gone. If the forms aren't giving us enough information to clearly communicate across all 3 entities, then we need to update it. So, Dan, I know you've completed 3 now, right? 3 communications forms. There was a Restore New York one. And then there was these 2 that we just discussed. Pam's done 2. So I'm asking for a couple of things. One is, when Pam puts those 2 village ones in, how do we make sure that the town board sees them? Should you take them to the town board? Should I?
I think.
Yeah,
I was thinking that's what would happen.
And
And
so
so
Pam
Pam
does
does those 2. I've got to make sure that Pam takes
the
the
3
from the village,
from the
from the
town
town to the village.
But
But
as
as you're using these forms,
and
and I got a little bit of feedback from the village,
that
there was like spaces where there wasn't enough room, or they wanted, there were some other things they wanted to tell us.
Please
Please give us that feedback, right? So,
I
and I
encourage
that
everybody on the board
knows,
right? We
right?
should
We should
all
all be,
nobody
nobody
should
should say,
I
I
didn't
know
know
the
the was
town's
doing that. I didn't
know
know
the
the
village
was
was
doing
doing
that.
Can't we just do an electric document where they add additional notes?
Well,
It is just a Word document, they could add whatever.
But I'm just saying,
if it
comes that
there's something like,
wow,
wow,
this
this
form
really should always,
like,
we would always want to know. Like if Dan said, I would always want to know on a village one,
X, Y, Z, and I'm not seeing that,
then
then we should add it as an item.
Oh, absolutely.
That's all I'm asking for, Jeannie.
Yeah, and I would make sure that there's footnotes with dates. So when the form was submitted, when you've got that footnote, then we've got, and it can be one of 4. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
That way, you know, okay, if it's one of one, it's the initial.
Yeah.
But then if the village, let's say they edit it, then it'll be one of 2, one of 3.
Yeah,
That
that's
way
a good
we're
version.
to really keep on top of what,
Yeah.
because again, it's like herding cats, right? It's a matter of, no one intentionally doesn't want to communicate, it's just a matter of how do you keep it organized and put the documents in and not for you to lose your hair on them, you know, so. But that's how I would suggest we do is do one of whatever, and that way, if we've got it updated.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a good
that's
suggestion. That's a good suggestion. And then we'll have, that'll be in the minutes, so Pam will be aware of that then. Great, thank you.
I shared the plan that we use for it, so you can see.
Ah, thank you.
So Scott, that's if phase two of Bud Street gets, the grants get approved, right?
Yep,
Is
yep.
what we're looking at right here.
Yep.
Okay, awesome.
But not the fourth dock unless we get a voter infrastructure.
So that's the village dock.
No,
Oh,
that's the village dock.
dock.
That's the
I
one
got
that's
you.
there now. So. the Town felt that we've got some momentum going and we might as well continue to build on.
Willing to sell his property.
Yep, yep, we met with them and
Last I heard, more than willing, like,
That's
Yeah.
a significant success, guys. Congratulations.
Yeah, that is great.
That makes it so much better.
we hope.
Okay, good.
I have a question on the Restore New York one, the one you did separately for Mr. Clapp. When will the grant be awarded? That was question mark. Is that,
they were awarded last week and he did not receive an award.
okay.
Is there a phase 4 for the marina? I'm just asking you, Scott, Dan.
Not yet. I hope I live long enough to see phase 2 and 3.
All right, Jim, I don't think we have any updates on marketing at this point, right?
No.
No. Okay, and Mandy's not here. She did send a note that Stacy Richards is still waiting for, they got a letter that said, we're just behind.
Okay.
So hopefully she'll hear soon. We talked about the office space. I think, Jim, we're on to you.
Okay. First of all, Mary, I sent you the memorandum. You might not have got it. This afternoon when I was asking about what time it was for the meeting.
Oh, no, I was actually moving stone in the rain, but okay, go ahead.
So I see that what the memorandum I created 2 weeks ago was still stuck in the draft column. So I sent it to you and I didn't know how to send it beyond you. So, but.
Okay.
we
And
can
I'll
do-
forward that when I see it,
Yeah.
when I get home.
So I've done a memorandum on this thing, which is a little comprehensive for the thing, but I can do a little bit of an overview, about the conference. I was actually impressed by the conference. I've gone as a reporter and participant on conferences like mayor's conferences, governance conference, stuff like that. I thought this was very, very good. And well, first of all, it had a lot of who was there. It was more a mid-state issue, mid-New York State issue, from the cities from sort of Albany to Buffalo, on each side of the thruway and down to Binghamton and down to Kingston a little bit. Closest geographic partner here that was from up here was Sackett's and Sackett's was the closest. There wasn't anybody that close other than that. I think there was some Tug Hill stuff and a Pulaski, I guess, right, was there. So it was sort of for communities that were bigger than what we are. But the strategists that were there and the speakers that were there were really, really good. One thing that impressed me that's different from my state, New Jersey, where we do a lot of these things, is that the New York officials who were there were extraordinarily eager to give a lot of advice on how to facilitate and plan your submissions on grants. I'll just say parenthetically, in New Jersey, it's a Darwinian approach. They let everybody kill each other, and the survivor is the one that's going to get the grant. And there's no help from government on here. But I have also included in the memorandum that will be distributed access to every one of the presentations that were made by topic by just googling into the mayor's site, and they have an agenda of what they are. I'll have there all the participants and where they came from. On the topics in general, let me just go through this for a second here. Again, all of this is in the memorandum that I sent. And it's got the other web links for all these topics and all these individuals. And let me just find my note here. this thing. The best part of this was actually, well, the state people on what they gave were really, really good. And that is also in with the links as well as their testimony on there and how they said you can get money and the source money. And I thought a lot of the tricks that they talked about, both there that they could and off to the side when people talked in little snatches of conversations, a couple of things surprised me. They said broad community support is much more important than you think it might be. I mean, everybody says we got to get collateral support for what you want to submit, but they said really intense, because if you don't have it really intense, it drops to the bottom of the pile, and you never know that was the reason. That's what one person said on this, right? So broad support, and they used the term community consensus, which they said was actually, it's a code word for and a polite word for political consensus on any project that you're doing. They like to see it very broad. And also you're penalized very heavily. They said, these are the New York administrators, right? That if you say it is, we've got broad support, all that kind of stuff, and we have community support, meaning political support and something like that. And they find out that you don't, and it's real easy to find out on the back polls they do, but they can Google this stuff and find conflict. Back to the bottom of the pile again, they said. And I actually thought that was a little outrageous, that would be something that was off the literal application. But apparently that is the case and can be the case. They were mentioning also that the competition for funding now is getting much more severe than it ever was. The backflow of federal money to the state, to the states, is going to be a factor that clogs up what they are going to have to be able to distribute even locally. For even separate things, because other accounts aren't going to be flush with money this time on here. They also mentioned that where you can describe a private collateral investment, and this will have a related to something I want to talk about. It's legal, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but where you can work to show any kind of private collateral, private investment with this thing, it rises to the top of the pile. It may not be in the application to show, but it can be in the discussions that you explain on this thing. And I know Scott goes through this better than I do on this stuff, but that was a little bit of a hidden thing that the Oswego people, when I talked to them, or what is it, Oswego or Oswego?
Oswego.
Thank you. Oswego, got it. So Oswego found that that private collateral investment was critical to the whole plan that they put in and put in place that I went and talked, I'll talk about the second. So the private kind of collateral investment that goes in there. So it was hosted by Oswego because of the success of Oswego, right, and what was happening. So again, all the presentations are there for you to see on any aspect you want to do, and they talked about everything that was in there. But I went for a walk. I'm a former reporter, so I go to meetings, but I also go to the people who are actually impacted. So I walked into the town of Oswego, and I went to all the buildings on the down street. Has anybody been to Oswego and seen this thing?
It's very pretty.
Yeah, it's very pretty, right? And it goes all the way to like a commonality with us, not the size, but waterfront. And the waterfront is connected to the walkability, by the way, to go downtown and do this thing. They also have seasonality as a factor in your economy, as we do here, right? When I walked the businesses to go to the seasonality, a lot of nice buildings were really put up with a lot of the money, and it was this really nice. But when you looked at about, I'm going to guess at the number, 1 out of every 5 or 6, and they've been doing this since 2018, are empty, and businesses have come and gone out of those buildings. And I went to a coffee shop, and I asked the owner of the coffee shop about what it's like now with the renovations and revitalizations and things. And I said, why are so many stores closed when they're talking about this as being a big successful economic story? And they said, they're overlooking one thing. We're poor. I thought that's such a typical government thing. Government does something to do something, but they didn't really examine, how it's going to be nourished and kept.
Sure.
But so the business flows through those buildings, and economics is really why you really want to do this at the end of the day. And plus, it's very difficult with the seasonal economy on top of that here, right? We have to make so much money in a short period of time and we starve in the winter. So on the business impact side, I was a little surprised to see that because that wasn't mentioned much when the mayor of the town talked about it to everybody else. But however, the literal economic investment was very significant. They got about, it's in the memorandum, I believe it's about 15 or 17 million dollars. I don't know, Scott, you know what it is?
They were the first ones to complete all their $10 million DRI projects.
That was it,
So
right?
they got the $10 million DRI, and they also have got some additional money from like the city of Syracuse, and Onondaga County had some other grants going on.
Right. But they used most of that money. Well, they got, I think, $3 million more, or they used it from the 10 million. I'm not sure, for the marina and.
They got port money because they're an official federal port. So they got some port money as well to do some work on the port.
Yeah, they did a lot of work in the port. I mean, it ate up a lot of the money, but that was one of their intentions as the drawing point, like the drawing point is here, right? What we're doing on Club Street and everything else is to bring them here. So they brought them to downtown, and the two significant things were the housing thing that they addressed, the private sector money. They got two $30 million private developers to put up mixed low-income housing, some market rate housing. They built the two things on one of the downtown side there, which I walked in to see in 1 year where the convention center was across the bridge. The units are all filled. There's a 14-month waiting list to even get in on there. They've considered that a big success. And I did talk to the originator of the economic driver guy that was the aide to the mayor, who is now the Oswego County guy I was talking to you about here. Yeah, Tim Stahl, I think his name was, whatever, who was tremendous. And I'm going to recommend that we find time to do another Zoom at some point in the fall, because he went from the town, or the city, excuse me, to the county. And then he says the county participation, counties don't know how to really do this with towns in many ways. And it could be something he thought up in Jefferson County. He was a little aware that they don't do this, but he was also suggesting that it can be very helpful in many ways. But also what he talked about getting the town going, because he was there at the beginning. I think it's worth a Zoom for the description of how he did it, and a prescription of what the environment's like now with greater partnerships, private sector. He mentioned to me one thing, one of the $30 million developers, and this I find incredible, but it is what it is. The developer only had about 1.1 million of the 30 million to his personal liability. So what developer is going to turn that deal down, right? And the other guy.
The affordable side?
It's what?
It was the affordable side? That was the 1 million? I'm sure it was.
I'm not sure.
Because of the
I think it was the one across the bridge he was talking about when he was talking to.
Because I work for affordable developers, so, yeah. So
But, I
there's
mean,
amazing money out there.
it's unbelievable.
Bring it in.
And the other thing he said was, and it's in the memorandum, don't overlook cultivating private developers while you're in the earliest stages of your own planning processes with grants, because it might not even be related to the grant you get, because it's just where they can come in on other programs. He said of these developers, neither of them were really aware of how deep and wide the financing possibilities were, and benefit to the developer really were. And he said those two things, which were 30 million, 30 and 30, and then there was another 20 million in various things that made it to 80. And I didn't believe the number because I thought it was too much for one. And he went through every one of the numbers, and he was a literal guy. And so this private sector, keep watch of and get in front of. He said, you just don't know what you're going to get. He said, we never did it before, but when we cast the lure out there, we'd reel it in 15 times and get nothing. And then the 16th time we get something. But you have to be out there collaterally while you're doing the government stuff and the government grants and things like that.
And
right?
Jim, just to add into that, that fits exactly, that's kind of the definition of the economic development strategy. Part of what this guy was talking to Mary about, that ties into exactly what you're saying.
And the other thing is, I say we didn't get anything from the Economic Development Council on our $850. I sent them a note and asked them to give me the contact information of all the developers that were members. because I thought we might need them sometime. So I do have that. Now, obviously, it's gonna, it's gonna decay over time. But that would be a group that we could begin to have conversations with.
He emphasized this point of having conversations even when you didn't need them. And he said you get an incredible amount of information that you use for yourself afterwards. And when you mentioned that group, the call you want to do on the Zoom,
Yeah,
thing,
the
right?
CZD guy.
I found in business, by the way, I almost always welcome these kinds of calls from vendors and all this kind of stuff. They made me smarter than I was.
Yep.
And you don't have to make them long, and most of them are sales oriented anyway. And they, you're not taking anything from them, but you're getting a lot of intelligence. And he kept saying that. He said, we weren't smart starting this, we were just in it. The other important thing that's in the memorandum as well, they did not have a C3 or a C4 to do this. And Scott, correct me if you know otherwise. They didn't have another autonomous entity like we are here. This one was done by a young mayor that got in, I forget his name right now, 2017. Okay. And he basically energized the town to do it. And one important reason was, according to this guy, it let the town immediately, with a city budget, it's not like it's going to be done here, but to authorize $350,000 to hire the infrastructure staff for grant writers, for policy people, and for experts in real estate. And they built that out. It was a gamble, but $350,000 became $80 million. That's the way they sold it later, right? But he said that was really key too, because while the city kept it, and that's not always the case, and sometimes not the case, in this particular case, it worked, but it was a leadership thing. And he said also, it was the tip of the pyramid. It was simplified to be a decision maker. And in this case, it was the mayor. And he goes, he understands how that can be in autonomous C3s, C2s, C3s, or 4s, how that can work. But it often doesn't work as good as what he called the strongman approach, even though this was a reformed mayor, apparently.
Benevolent dictator.
Yeah, that's kind of what he said.
Yeah.
And then they jumped very competitively. And then it's kind of stalled a little bit because they're consolidating what they've got on the growth. But also he too mentioned how incredibly competitive and good the competing applicants are getting right now. And that's the last thing I'll say, the woman, she's named in there, I forget her name in the memorandum. She said, the thoroughness, and I forget the word she used, about the wideness of support and the private sector thing when you have it. If you don't have it, you don't have it, right? But this wins, and increasingly people who don't have it don't win. So I don't know, that's kind of the overview, not to belabor.
Sounds like it was an amazing conference. I'm so glad you went.
Yeah, I
I'd be
think it
real
was really
anxious to
good.
hear your thing, and I'll forward that on as
Yeah,
soon as
but if
I
I
see
would
it.
have one recommendation, one, it would be that we maybe have a 30-minute Zoom with this guy who's extraordinarily good.
Send me, if you send me the name, then I'll see if,
Yeah.
we'll have you reach out to him on
Yes.
availability, and then we'll see who wants to meet.
I told him we might do that, by the way, so,
Yeah.
and he said, fine. But he did ask that it be after Labor Day, because he says he's
That's fine.
inundated on
Yeah,
stuff.
well, if we try to do this CZB thing, and we've got the thing we're preparing for the 12th, it will be the fall.
And then one thing we might want to ask him is how they market it to developers, private developers. Because he said everything up here is starting to get attractive.
Mhm. Well, I'll say this, and I've said it to Pam, but ripping down those Everly properties and just putting in a parking lot, when the biggest negative we heard about Club Street was we don't have waterfront dining. It's as close as we could get. Should we really be just ripping down and making more green space?
Well,
Because you
it's
could
evolution.
do a restaurant in the front and parking in the back.
Well, it'll be an evolution, right? Like first you just gotta get it.
Not if
cleaned
you
up.
find, well, yeah, but if you found a developer, Jean, that wanted to rip it down and build a restaurant with a big deck on it where you could sit outside and look at East End Park in the water. That would be a lovely.
I think we're gonna have to get Club Street going before we're gonna have developer attraction. Because once we have that infrastructure, then we're super attractive. It's like Clayton, I mean, I think that gets done. East End, though, I have to compliment the village. I was driving down in Cape for some reason, and there were all these boats. It wasn't French Fest, maybe it was July 4th, I can't remember when. Big cruiser boats were at East End docked. So people want to come to Cape, and they're on the inside of East End's docks. And I was like, great, they're utilizing that infrastructure. So I think as we get our transient dockage, boy, then we have the attraction, because then there's potential revenue. You know, I agree, I think it's coming, it's just.
One of the links I put in the memorandum is an expert, he was the guest speaker for the whole thing. He talked about the walkability, and then he also addressed the issue like East End Park is an issue. It's not a walkable thing, really, to come to where the restaurants and stuff would be. But he addressed that issue as well. I mean, there were jitneys, there were interim things there, and it might be something worth looking at. I put the link in there because of the East End issue versus where the commerce is.
The only advantage Oswego has is they have 8,000 students.
That's true. That's true.
So, I mean, it's a little, not so seasonal and.
And they have they have a lot.
Yeah.
In Oswego, they have industry, they have a diverse economic base where we don't, but that doesn't mean we can't glean from their successes.
The restaurant and the food thing is big because when we had our kickoff meeting, we were down on the dock back in June on a Tuesday, and there was 4 good-sized boats there that were spending the night, and we talked to all 4 of them. We went up and said, hey, this is what we're doing. Could you give us some feedback? And every one of them said, what are we gonna eat tonight?
Yeah.
That's what they said.
I know, that's why I looked at that piece of property and I'm like.
And 2 of them were loopers, and they said it's on a site that there's nowhere to eat, like it's posted right on there amongst the users, like there's nowhere to eat Monday through Thursday or whatever. She's like, it's right on there.
Hopefully, we'll
No, I
change that.
agree, but it's feedback, you know.
Yeah,
that was-
and it's valuable.
Supports what you want to do.
And then you go to Clayton and there is a place to park
And your
at 9 o'clock in the morning.
your comments about wide support goes back to the updated comp plan. If all these projects and these initiatives are in that comp plan that was vetted by the community through multiple workshops and multiple public sessions, it shows community-wide support. It wouldn't be in there if there was negative, feedback.
All right, anything else for the good of the group?
I would just like 2
Yes.
things. The other people you might want to talk about a housing and economic study is MRB Group, Tracy. They've done them all over the state for communities. I know they've done some really good ones, both economic development and housing. And then the second thing, as we move forward, I have the village is waiting for final payment on the LWRP. So administrative wise, it leaves me with Club Street and Tibbetts Point. Guys are paying me for 6 to 8 hours a week. If there's some of these strategic initiatives you want to assign to me to utilize my time and my resources, I could use some direction, I guess. That's.
Well, my hope is that once we get through, the meeting on the 12th, and we sort of get the blessing that, yes, we like your tactical plans, then people are gonna have to be assigned and work plans are gonna have to be put in place. I would be surprised if the town and village boards said, we don't want you to do that, but until we get that go ahead, I think that, at least from my point of view, I think that's sort of our next step. Everybody agree?
I agree. It's getting busy.
Yeah. All right. I would like a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Public comment?
Oh, public comments. Maria, were we like paint drying?
I'm very impressed.
Oh, thank you. I'll give you that $5 later.
Is she a relative?
No. Yes, we have a few
Great.
groups we're on together. Did, any questions?
No.
Good, please, come again.
Thank you for attending.
Yes.
We appreciate it.
We do, we really do.
So moved.
All right, so I think Dan says he motioned to adjourn. Can I have a second?
Second.
And Jim, all in favor?
All right.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everybody.
We'll get your check for this.